When was the last time you made a meaningful decision in your life that was completely from you and there was no influence from your family, your friends, any groups you're in, or anybody that you've heard talking, like online? Many of us struggle to answer this simply because a lot of us are raised thinking, or maybe not even thinking, just looking outside of ourselves to find certainty or truth. And it becomes this thing where you find yourself always looking outside of yourself rather than inside to find what you really need, or what your real opinion is about anything. So today I'm going to talk about a concept, and it's called self-sovereignty. I'm going to get into what it is, why sometimes it's uncommon, even especially in this day and age, and how it relates to dogma, because dogma can kind of come in quietly. And I hope you are excited to learn about this topic with me today. All right, beautiful souls, let's get into it. So, when I say dogma, many of us think religion, right? Because that's like the most common form of dogma. But dogma isn't always just religious. It's not always someone standing in front of a pulpit with a Bible in their hand, reading scripture or whatever. Although it can be, and for a lot of us, that's where we're introduced to dogma. But dogma is kind of any belief system. And any belief system where we just take it on, where we stop examining and we just take it in. It's ideas that have become inherited. Sometimes these ideas are protected, and a lot of times they become unquestioned. There's no curiosity in dogma. It is what it is, and that's the end. So, and also sometimes, it comes in like we take it in voluntarily, sometimes not even knowing. So some examples of places or groups that can have dogmatic thinking, they can be spiritual communities that discourage questioning. It can be in wellness spaces that elevate gurus over personal discernment. It can be political groups, which is something we're going through right now. And those political groups can punish nuance. And it also, and this is one where I especially see it as well, is self-help groups. Or self-help like frameworks. Because sometimes the idea of self-help becomes more important than the individual itself. And so the idea itself, or the issue, isn't the belief itself. It kind of comes from possibly a feeling. And that feeling may be when you're in these types of groups or environments, there may be something inside of you that you may be feeling, but you ignore it because these are your beliefs, right? So if you find yourself in some kind of group or anything, these are questions you can ask yourself. Does this group allow me to be more curious or less curious? Do I feel like when I'm in these groups or environments, do I feel more authentic or do I feel more performative? If I ask a question, is it, deterred? Like, are these questions welcomed, or are they kind of feel feared and explained away? And something else to consider for those who love astrology the way I do. So what's interesting right now is that in the current transits, one of the main ones that many astrologers have been talking about, especially one that happened earlier this year, was the Neptune and Saturn conjunction in Aries. But as of right now, on June 6th, 2026, Saturn and Neptune are still in Aries, and they're going to be in there for a while. So what's going on, in some way I kind of read this, not just the conjunction, but just the transit in and of itself. We both have Saturn and Neptune moving through Aries, and I would say that Saturn in Aries is kind of asking us to take personal responsibility, where you stop waiting for someone else to hand you the answer, or you stop waiting for someone to give you a direction. And Aries, which is a very self-sovereign sign, is kind of telling you, find your own path. Okay, so, but Neptune in Aries can kind of, because Neptune is that foggy planet, it can kind of blur all of that together. Like Neptune and Aries, you tend to dissolve your boundary. Maybe you're being a little bit more, how would you say, like you're losing yourself in someone else's vision, right? Like, you kind of blur. You stop being your own self and you start becoming this other thing, right? There's no more individual with Neptune. But that's opposite of what Aries is, because Aries is very individual. So you may be looking for someone else's certainty right now. And like even everywhere you see, you may be seeing something like that, right? So you're taking on someone else's identity. But I would say if you mix Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, you're kind of essentially asking, can you stay grounded in yourself even when everybody else around you and everything else around you is not? Are you able to stay strong enough to pull yourself out of that and stay true to yourself? So I would just say, like, sit with yourself for a minute here. And sometimes it may be uncomfortable to ask these questions because we don't want to admit that we give our power away. But it happens. It's normal. Sometimes it's just the human experience. And so I would just invite some self-reflection. Where do you find yourself outsourcing your truth the most? Or in any case, whose opinions do you feel carry more weight than your own inner knowing? And so it could come from anywhere, really, like the dogma. It can come from anywhere. So it could be a teacher, one of your favorite teachers. It could be a community. It could be an ideology. It could be a creator you watch on YouTube. And you can kind of get sucked into these communities. But I would just say, think about it. And allow yourself that moment of quiet, okay? So kind of get into the habit of asking yourself ask yourself these questions and sit with yourself and listen to yourself before you try to look outside of yourself. Because in this day and age, right, you can just go on the internet, Google up something, and get your answer before you even sit with it or feel into it. Or even now that AI is becoming a big thing, we may go to AI. Like there's a real big issue now where people are having a psychosis, AI psychosis, and sometimes it's a spiritual psychosis, because we are looking for that answer outside of ourselves. So that it happens. All right. So just things to keep in mind. And one of the key questions here is, where in life does doubt feel dangerous? And we often surrender our sovereignty where uncertainty feels uncomfortable. And to be honest, and to let you know that sometimes this is more normal than we realize, is that looking for certainty, sorry, I can't talk. Looking for certainty isn't a flaw. We as human beings are wired to belong in a group with people. We're wired to reduce this feeling of uncertainty. I don't know why I can't say this word today. Sorry, guys. Uncertainty. We're wired to reduce uncertainty. And it's because safety and truth aren't always the same thing, right? So one thing that we can ask ourselves is, whose truth am I living? Is it mine? Or is it somebody else's? And so I would say that self-sovereignty is it's not a destination, right? It's a journey. It's a daily practice of returning to yourself when everything is chaotic around you, where everybody has an opinion. I mean, you cannot go anywhere with somebody telling you something. So it's this thing where you're constantly having to look inward. And yeah, sometimes it can feel kind of heavy or cumbersome, but the reward at the end of it is, worth its weight in gold, I would say. So I just want to share like a quick anecdotal story of self-sovereignty in action. All right. So I have a friend, and recently she was she was asked if she wanted to take this new position at her job, which would become like a promotion for her. All right. And so she came to me because I'm a coach and I'm a good person to, sound off on. Like, I just listen. And so she kind of came with me with that intent already. All right. So, but in her telling me about this position and everything, which, from the get-go in my mind, I was like, take it, take it. She's a very bright young lady. She's very personable. And it was a good fit for her. And she would be making more money. Like, where are these fears coming from? Just take it, right? But I didn't want to be that person that gave her the answer. Because I really truly believe in self-sovereignty, that you have the answers. Like, yeah, she could ask me all day, but it doesn't mean anything until you feel it yourself. And that's where she was coming from, right? So she had all these fears, which is normal, especially for change, even if it's good change. Like, this was a good position for her, but it was still scary. And that's human, that's normal. So with all of these fears, she kept on, throwing out at me. What about this? What happens if this happens? Why this? What that? What happens if, it just kept on going on and on. And I validated them all right? Like, yeah, that's an honest fear, and, it's valid that you have this fear. And at some point during the conversation, she did say, Jennifer, if you were in my position, what would you do? And, for that split second, I just wanted to tell her, take the job. But I didn't, And I said, look, this is not my life. This is not my promotion. I can't give you the answer. And, She was just like, that's such a coach thing to say. And, I kept on asking her, some really good open-ended questions until she finally realized during the call um, that she wanted the job. And that was it. She just needed somebody there to listen to her, somebody that she could tell all these fears to, and finally come to the answer that made her feel good and comfortable. And that was that she wanted the job. And even though it was scary, it was okay, even if it was going to change some things for her. So, like, the lesson in that, and, just for everyday purposes, self-sovereignty often looks ordinary. It's not always dramatic, although it can be. It can be dramatic. It's just simply creating space to listen to yourself, and quieting down. So I just want to be clear. This isn't about rejecting teachers or systems or communities. It's mostly just about changing your relationship to them. Because if you have a good teacher, they are mirrors for you. They're not necessarily authorities. They're really just there to help you see yourself more clearly. And they're not really there to tell you who you are. And some things you can think of or important shifts that come along when you are on this journey of taking responsibility for yourself and being self-sovereign is, instead of saying, tell me what's true, I need to know, it's more, help me hear what I already know. Or, where do I belong? To, who am I when I'm not trying to perform and belong to something? And instead of saying, what should I believe? I don't know. It goes from that to, what do I notice when I get quiet enough to listen? And so this takes practice. It takes practice to hear yourself. It takes practice to get outside of everyone else's opinion and the noise that's around you. And if you are in this in-between space where you have been used to listening to what other people are saying, but you're not quite there where you can actually listen to yourself and trust yourself, it can feel a little uncomfortable. And it's only because, like, these old frameworks of always going outside of yourself is still kind of holding on. But you're in between, so you're starting to figure out a little bit where a new understanding emerges. And that discomfort is often where the real growth happens. I know that's where I have been at many times in my life, and that is where I found the most honest parts of myself. So, in the end, no one, not me, not your favorite creator, not your favorite teacher, not this group that you're a part of, no one has a clear idea of your life other than you do. And good teachers, they don't replace your inner knowing, they reflect it. And they help you recognize what's already there. And also, good ones don't take over your life. When a system asks you to trust it more than trusting yourself, this is when you can kind of get curious. What am I being asked to stop questioning? Why are my spidey senses making an alarm in my body? Why is my intuition kind of, feeling ramped up right now? And so self-sovereignty is not a rebellion. Actually, let me rephrase that. It shouldn't be rebellion, right? Because it should be a normal act. But sometimes it's hard, and it becomes radical for you to hear your own truth and your own intuition. So in that sense, it is kind of a rebellion. A rebellion to, finally taking that honest and responsible inner knowing that you have inside of yourself. And also it's about understanding. It's where every belief becomes examined and every assumption is questioned. And it's kind of like every layer you uncover, every belief, every assumption that kind of fades away, changes how you see everything. So that's the work. It's the work of trusting yourself. And if you're still here, you're probably already doing it, which is great. But if you're not, that's okay too. It's a journey. So I would just say, if you got this far, please like, share, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and it would help my channel a whole lot. And all right, I will see you in the next one. Bye.